Welcome to What the World is Watching. Here's your host, John Andoska.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Again, I'm your host, John Andoska, and today this is a very special show. As I mentioned on the last episode, we had the interview with Vince Russo, but today, on Fridays here, we're going to be having a different kind of show. You could call it the B show, I guess maybe the thunder of everything, but hopefully it'll be much more entertaining than any thunder episodes were. But joining me today is my good friend, Quaylen Harris. How are you doing today, Quaylen?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem at all. And also joining us today is my friend to the end, the Brutus Beefcake to my Hulk Hogan, my best pal Rocky, and he's a dog, by the way. That's why he didn't say anything. But he's very attentive, and he seems to know what's going on with everything. He loves the WWE Network as well. But I guess getting into it here, real quick, Quaylen, why don't you give everybody a bit of background on your history or knowledge of wrestling, because you're somebody who's been kind of a casual fan.
Yeah.
You've been kind of in and out, but tell people just kind of what your story is.
Well, I know my father is the one who got me into watching wrestling, because he used to watch it back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, mid 80s, and then I remember watching a lot of stuff when I was younger, but I really didn't remember, I can't really recall things that I watched until the era of Shawn Michaels when he first started, or when he left his tag team, went solo, and then, Bret Hart and Owen and all of them, and then the beginning of the Attitude Era was probably when I was really into it. But I was that fan that watched both WCW and WWE. Yeah. I was the one flipping back and forth because I liked NWO, but I also liked the product that WWE was putting out at the time. I was that person who was a fan of the weird characters like Tatanka and Doink and all of them. I like those. Of course, The Undertaker is one of my favorite wrestlers, along with Shawn Michaels. I like the main card guys, but also like the other guys as well. So, but then I started probably in high school, and it probably was around when WCW started going down. Is when I really stopped watching it, because there wasn't that competitive nature between both the WCW and the WWE anymore, because WWE was just taking over. And I still loved watching Stone Cold and Mankind, or Dude Love, or Cactus Jack, whoever Mick Foley was that week. And then I don't know, and I hate to say it, but it was around the time when John Cena was really starting to become big, that I was just I can't do this anymore. Yeah. I just felt like the product started getting a little weak at the time, and incorporating different rosters for Raw and SmackDown, and it was just kind of getting a little confusing for me. It was just
well, you weren't alone with that, and I told Vince Russo on the show last week that I followed it as closely, as close as possible as I could when I was a kid, and then all of a sudden during the Attitude Era, when WCW and WWE were going at it and all that, the Monday Night War, it was the big thing at school. Suddenly there were girls that were watching, and I would have pay-per-view parties and everything. And then about the exact time you're talking about, 99, 2000, when WCW it wasn't a fight anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's when again, I was alone watching the pay-per-views again, and nobody really cared at school, because I was the guy that people, they wanted to talk to about it, because they knew that I liked it. So you weren't alone with that. And then, and another thing about Quaylen too is I had mentioned on one of the earlier episodes of how, we've done a lot of documentary projects and different things, and Quaylen's been working on some of those with me and been at the Fan Fest and different things. So I think that's what kind of rekindled your interest in getting to meet a lot of the guys, right?
It did, because I would hear a lot of the guys speak, and then them talk about the old matches that they remembered and everything like that. And it just so happened, it was right around the time that the network was launching. So I'm like, man, I really want to see, I really want to see Midnight Express wrestle. Rock and Roll Express, because everyone talks about like how great those matches were, and I'm not really big on YouTube and watching things on YouTube because it'll just be able to click on Facebook will draw my attention away from sitting in front of a computer and watching YouTube. But if I have the network and I can sit there and have it playing on TV while I'm able to do something else, I can like glance at it and see, oh yeah, this was a good match. And then it was probably the first fan fest I did with you when we were in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And everyone was talking about Piper and how he hit Snuka in the head with the coconut, and everyone was talking about like how that was a moment. I'm like, I've never seen that. So, it was good to go back and actually see that, and it kind of rekindled the inner child in me and how much I enjoyed watching wrestling. So I got the network, and now I'm like going back and watching things that I haven't watched before in that era where I stopped watching, that time period where I stopped watching. And, there's some really good things that I've missed, but then there are some really good things that I'm glad I missed.
Well, we're going to be talking about a little bit of some of that stuff a little bit later today. And one of the cool things, and I think one of the reasons why the network works too is because it isn't just WWE, and they have a lot of stuff.
Right.
That's they own the WCW library and the ECW library, and specifically talking about ECW, one of the things that we did in our first episode that a lot of people liked was we had something called Promo Theater, where we had the Dusty Rhodes legendary Hard Times promo done in the style of a Morgan Freeman voiceover. This week we have something a little different, and it's the legendary Kane Dewey promo from ECW that Cactus Jack or Mick Foley did, and it's probably one of the best. It really is. If you watch, you can watch it on the network, I think, and or you can find it online. I know the WWE's website had it on there, and they actually did it. They actually interviewed Dewey, Foley's son, who's now in his 20s, but they interviewed him about that and stuff like that. So I think there's a story of it on there. But anyway, this week we have the Kane Dewey promo done in the style of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So let's check that out real quick, and we'll be, let's see how this goes. You ready for this?
Oh yeah,
here we go.
I'm going to take you back to a very deciding point in my life, a time when I believed in something. A time when I thought that my face and my name made a difference. Do you remember the night, Tommy Dreamer? Because it's embedded in my skull. It's embedded in my heart. And it's embedded in every nightmare that I will ever have again. As Terry Funk took a bottle and began slicing and dicing Cactus Jack, the pain was so much, Tommy, that I'll be honest with you. I wanted to say I quit, Terry Funk. I waved the flag, and I'm a coward. Please don't cut me anymore. When I saw my saving grace, you see, Tommy, I looked out in that audience, my adoring crowd, and I saw two simple words that changed my life. Kane Dewey. Somebody had taken the time and the effort and the thought to make a sign that said, Kane Dewey. And I saw other people around as every moment in my life stopped and focused in on that sign, and the pain that shot through my body became a distant memory, replaced by the pain that will be embedded in my skull till my dying day. Kane Dewey. Kane Dewey. Dewey Foley is a 3-year-old boy. You sick sons of bitches! You ripped out my heart! You took everything I believed in, and you flushed it down the damn toilet! You flushed my heart, you flushed my soul, and now it sickens me to sit back and see other people making the same mistake! You see, Tommy Dreamer, I've got to listen to my little boy every day of my life say, Daddy, I miss Atlanta. And I say, that's too bad, son, because your dad traded in the Victorian house for a sweatbox in Long Island. Your daddy traded in $100,000 contract, guaranteed money, insurance, respect, and the name on the dotted line of the greatest man in the world to work for a scumbag who operates out of a little peasant pawn shop in Philadelphia. You don't expect me to be bitter? Tommy, when you open up your heart, when you open up your soul, and it gets shit on, it tends to make Jack a very mean boy. And so, I'm saying to you, before I take these aggressions out on you, to look at your future and realize that the hardcore life is a lie, that these letters behind me are a blatant lie, that those fans who sit there and say, he is hardcore, he is hardcore, he is hardcore, wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, you selfish son of a bitch. Yeah.
All right, so there was Arnold Schwarzenegger doing Kane Dewey. What do you think?
You know, it's the whole time that was going. I mean, it was funny to me hearing Arnold Schwarzenegger do that impression, but I kept thinking about when we interviewed Foley, and we talked to him about that promo and about everything like that, and it was just weird hearing his side, but then hearing Arnold do the promo. And it's just like you hear Foley talk about how serious it is, but then Arnold doing it, and it's just kind of funny now. They can't do it.
Yes, and so it does. It's pretty interesting to see what these sound like with actual it's not actually Arnold Schwarzenegger doing it, but like what these would be like if these were like lines from a movie or something like that.
But no, it was a good impression of Arnold impression. I've always said the Arnold impression is probably the most overdone impression, and a lot of people think they can do it and they can't. But this guy did a good job on it. Kane Dewey.
Absolutely. And next week we have a special treat. It's going to be an Ultimate Warrior promo. I'm just going to leave it at that.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody will be excited for that. But when you guys check out the site 999nation.com, let us know what you think. We're going to have all these up there, and if there's any that you'd like to hear, any specific promos or any specific takes on them or celebrities or anything like that, let us know. Speaking of the website, there's something that we have on there that we started. We want to make a kind of an online community for people who enjoy the network and different things about it. And one of the things that's kind of cool that I think is that you could go back and see yourself on the network at different times, like if you've attended events and everything like that. That was one of the first things that we did, is we went back and watched different things where we might have been in like the front row once or twice, or just in the audience you could see. And it's funny even seeing the fans throughout different eras, but we have a little section on there called I Was There, and we hope that we'll get other people to contribute in the future, and have them on our show here to give stories and talk about different experiences going to live events, especially live events that are legendary or memorable, different WrestleManias and things like that. I guess, but to get the ball rolling, I guess, since we have Quaylen here, I want to talk about one of my experiences. The first pay-per-view I ever went to, something that I could say I was there for, was Survivor Series 92. And again, if you go to the website, there's actually a photo. You can see me. It's when Doink came out during the Tatanka and Rick Martel match, and he was making balloon animals and taunting me and my friend and my brother with those, and a lot of other fans around us. But one of the things that stands out about this event in particular is, now, at this time, I am about to turn 9 years old. So this is a little bit before my 9th birthday. So I'm 8 years old, and like I said, a big wrestling fan my whole life. And this is happening at the the Richfield Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
So, Quaylen, you grew up around the Cleveland area a lot closer than I was.
Yep.
So you definitely remember Richfield and all that sort of stuff. And the thing about Richfield, though, is that they had the first 2 Survivor Series events there in 87 and 88 when it was a Thanksgiving tradition. It was on like Thanksgiving night and everything else. So the cool thing about Survivor Series is that it only had Survivor Series matches.
Yeah.
And it did that until, I think it was 1991, where they inserted the little match there of Hogan versus The Undertaker, the Gravest Challenge. So that was the first time that they had like a singles match or anything like that wasn't a Survivor Series match on a Survivor Series pay-per-view. So, Survivor Series was one of my favorites, probably next to the Royal Rumble, which is probably everybody's favorite.
No, that's my favorite.
But Survivor Series was great because I love the different, when you have like, maybe a whole team survives, or, it's like, it gets down to 2 guys that you want to see face each other or whatever. And so the Survivor Series is always one of my favorites as a little kid. So when I found out that they were coming back to the Richfield Coliseum and it was only an hour away from our house, I begged my brother and I begged our dad to get tickets and everything else, and he did, and we got seats like right on the aisle.
Awesome.
So we were so excited about it, like, again, like this is going to be the biggest thing ever, right? Well, until they start sort of announcing the card and like who's going to be there, because we find out that the main event is going to be Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Now, okay, in any other time, this is 5 years before their infamous Survivor Series match with the screw job and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, these are 2 guys. Like, Bret Hart had just won the title, so he wasn't even really looked at as like a main event guy yet.
Yeah.
Okay, Shawn Michaels had just won the Intercontinental title, and it is kind of still, even though he'd been away from the Marty Jannetty for years, still fresh in his like whole boy toy kind of thing, and he's kind of not like really like on the main event yet, But then, that's one of the things, that's the championship match that they're going to have, and I figured, well, I guess they're going to have a championship match now every year. Well, then you start hearing more stuff coming out, and it's the coffin match. It wasn't casket yet, but it was a coffin match.
Yeah, I remember that.
Between Undertaker and Kamala. Okay, whatever. And then it's Big Boss Man versus Nails, and all these singles matches are being announced, and I'm like, really, like, what the heck? Like, what is going on? And then it was going to be, at least it's going to be a tag match for the other main event. It's going to be Macho Man Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. But wait a second. Unbeknownst to us as fans, or at least kids fans, us, like, who didn't read like dirt sheets or know what was going on,
right?
All of a sudden, Ultimate Warrior disappears, which you find out later was for, I guess, him and British Bulldog actually disappeared for what was, I guess, drug thing or steroid thing or whatever.
Right. Or was that the time when it was rumors that he got eaten by a shark or something like that?
Yeah, it was always because at that time too, as one of my dad's friends was convinced that the Ultimate Warrior had died like 2 times and it was replaced, but unfortunately he died once and for all, last year. But anyway, the point is that they do this whole thing where they scramble and they put Mr. Perfect in the main event with Savage, who had been with Flair the whole time. He was in WWE and was his like executive consultant, I guess, which was a different way of saying manager, but they put him and Bobby Heenan with them, which was great, and they made a great team. But now they're scrambling, so they do this whole thing where where Perfect like switches sides and then is with Macho suddenly, which is kind of weird, but it was kind of cool, I guess. It was cool. Like, what else could they have done, really?
Right.
So that's the thing. It was just disappointing. Like, I guess it was disappointing that it wasn't like a Survivor Series pay-per-view. It was just another pay-per-view.
Yeah,
with just matches. And in fact, the only Survivor Series match was like the Natural Disasters and the Nasty Boys versus, I think it was the Beverly Brothers and Money Incorporated. So it was like, that was even like bigger kick in the nuts, is that was their Survivor Series match. But still, nevertheless, we're still excited because it's a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And back in those days, for anybody who, who is under maybe 20 years old, back in those days, we used to have to you had to actually, if you've seen those old clips where Mean Gene says, call your local cable company right now, like you literally had to get on the phone then and reserve, and we had to go downtown to Cablevision, and we had to get this little adapter that plugged into our TV in the back. And then you had to do it if you wanted to record it. You had to make sure it was done into the VCR. It's a big mess. Basically, it wasn't just the matter of pushing a button or turning on or hitting a button on your iPad to watch it on the network. It was a lot more confusing back in the day. But anyway, like pay-per-views were a big deal because there were only a few of them a year. So to actually be able to see one live was an even bigger deal too. So in fact, at this time too, we had never even been to a televised event or anything because there weren't like Raws every week. They do TV tapings and all that stuff. So we're like, are we going to be able to hear are we going to be able to hear the commentary? We didn't know.
Yeah.
As kids, we didn't know how it worked. We were still super excited for it. So we go and the roster of who all went was my dad took us. And it was my dad, who was never really a fan, but just went and, went for the sake of us. And, still to this day, had to be the greatest dad ever to do that, to sit there and through all this crap. But it was my dad, my older brother, a friend of his, Scott, and myself, and then my best friend at the time, Matt Delisani. So we all show up, and again we have seats on the aisle and everything else. And I remember when we walked in, the first thing we saw was Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan kind of on the platform, because they used to have them like
in the back.
Yeah. So I remember seeing them, and they must have been doing like the pre-show stuff or whatever. And we got down to our seats again. That was the closest we'd ever been to at this point. So it was really cool. And, I remember I have good memories of the event. And I remember Doink being right in front of us. As I said, you could actually see us at that part of the show. And I remember we got to touch the coffin and all that stuff. We were in WWF magazine too.
That's cool.
A picture of us by the coffin. And I remember probably the highlight of the night was for us when there was a particular point in the match because Mr. Perfect wasn't quite sure if he'd done the right thing because Savage was getting his ass kicked. He wasn't sure if he'd done the right thing with aligning himself with Savage and turning his back on Flair. So he started walking to the back, and then he was kind of looking at the audience like, what should I do? And it's one of those funny things this day. My brother and I joked that we helped Perfect decide, because we're like, no, go, but because we're big Savage fans, as everybody was. Actually not like Randy Savage. And my brother in particular was a huge Mr. Perfect fan, so that was like them being together was like a dream team for him. So it was one of those things where it was like, we're like desperately trying to tell him like to go back, and he did. So we joke to this day that was something that that we had a hand in.
It was you two.
It was us. We were the ones that did it, and we changed, the course of WWE history. But I guess it's so, and then the last match on the card, the actual main event was the title match, which is it was an okay match. If you hear Brett talk about in interviews or anything, it was just an okay match, and it was good. And then like the highlight for us too as kids was great because Santa came out at the end and it started snowing and all that, so that was cool. But it was cool like being there live, but then like watching it back later and then even watching it today, it's such an underwhelming Survivor Series. It's probably one of the worst in history, in my opinion. Yeah. Because even the next year, the other kick in the balls about this whole thing is that the very next year they went back to all Survivor matches.
Yeah.
The next year.
Watching that one.
So it was one of those things where it's just like, why did that even have to happen that way? I don't know. But that was one of those things. There's a lot of good memories, I guess, from just being there at the time, and so it was kind of cool. I don't really, I wish that we would have been able to go to more events at that time. And it was just totally different than it is now.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it has to be a cool experience. I mean, just like, me, I will go on the record and say, I don't know if this is going to hurt my cred, with the fans out there, but I've never been to a live event.
Well, that's the thing is, you talk about the cred though. Like the thing is that we said you're a casual fan, so like you getting to experience a lot of stuff on the network, and what we're talking about is, you're earning your cred now, and that's the thing. What a lot of people can do is go back. That's what's great about the network is, you might have heard me talk about this with Jim Cornette, but like I have, and you probably, I think you might have seen my room at my parents' house.
Yeah.
Where it's just, I mean, I have thousands of tapes.
Yeah.
Where before I would have to give you, and there were times where here and there you'd borrow DVDs and stuff from me before the network, but now I can just say, hey, you can watch Survivor Series 92.
Right. Which I
can just
did,
tell you,
yeah.
and you could just go watch it now on your own. It's just everybody has access to the same stuff now. Like you said, anytime you hear Cornette or those guys talking about the Rock and Roll Express or the old Starcade or anything, you can go back and watch it now, which is really cool. So that's what this is about. It's about kind of, experiencing, it's fun to experience those things, get to talk to you about it. If you're, some things you might have missed or whatever, from different eras and things like that. Because for me, like, I'm obsessed with this stuff. So I've been, I almost feel like it's hard to take a step back from it sometimes.
Right.
So that's what's cool about talking to you about this. But, as far as, being at different events and things like that, we hope that, we want to get some more people sharing stories. I know myself, and I want to get my brother on here actually to talk about some stuff, because we have some stories about even almost getting in a fight at WrestleMania 20. And we're not the type of people that fight.
Really? You've never told me
I
that
never
story.
told you that story, so you'll have to wait to hear that. But that, there's some great stuff, and at those different events. So anybody too, I guess, write into us. There's, check out the website and let us know if you'd like to be part of the show here, and either, we can either write a column on the website or both or whatever. We'd love to hear different fan experiences from, even if it was just as recently as like this past WrestleMania or anything, or the last, TLC pay-per-view or something like that, anything. Or we'd love to hear what the experience was like. So, so let us know. But real quick, we're going to cover something in particular that I know that Quaylen's gotten to experience here on the network, something like firsthand, and I got to walk him through it personally. So we're going to talk about that. Before we do, I want to tell everybody about our sponsor. It's WrestlingDVDnews.com. And you can visit WrestlingDVDnews.com for exclusive insider news and reviews on all the latest WWE DVDs and Blu-rays first. What's the next WWE DVD release on the horizon? Which should you buy and which should you avoid? How is the WWE Network changing the company's strategy on DVDs? Plus, get involved with their multiple giveaways each and every month for your chance to win WWE DVDs absolutely free. It's all happening now at WrestlingDVDnews.com.
Do you want it?
Do you really want it?
If you want it, get IcoPro Thermic Force, the 6-week complete integrated conditioning program to help maximize your body's potential and enhance muscle definition. It's more than just pills and powders.
IcoPro really works.
Yeah, check this out. That was me before IcoPro. This is me now. You've gotta want it.
IcoPro Thermic Force, you've gotta want it. At fine health stores and general nutrition centers.
And we're back. Okay, we want to welcome everybody back to the show here.
That was weird.
Yeah, that's from. I've been wanting to do that for a while. That's from Jimmy Fallon. He used to do. It was skit on SNL where he was making fun of the. There's a parody of all those drive time DJs and everything on the radio.
Yeah,
hey, we're back, and all that sort of stuff. So I want to do that for a while. It's one of my favorite. Joey Mack and the Fuzz check that out. Anyway, Quaylen here has gotten to experience something on the network that is pretty amazing. So a couple weeks ago, I as well, I'm sure a lot of other people noticed, something just sort of magically appeared. There was no fanfare about it at all, but suddenly I look under my shows and all of a sudden there's TNT there. And I got to tell you something. TNT Tuesday Night Titans has been one of my all-time favorite things that's ever happened in WWE because it is just so horrible. You cannot find anything worse than this. And the first time I saw it was on the old Coliseum video, and it was just like a clip or like a clip, video, like the best of. And so I didn't really get to experience any of the full episodes until the Classics on Demand channel that there was a few years back, the precursor of the network. But now the fact that they're starting to roll them out on the WWE Network, I couldn't have been happier. It couldn't have been a better Christmas gift for me. But the thing is I wondered kind of how new fans would react to this, or fans who just maybe weren't familiar with a lot of the guys who were around back then. People like Salvatore Valomo or Tony Gurria and all these people that they had on as guests. Like, I wonder, they had Iron Mike Sharp on as a guest, and I mean, I just wonder what a fan who maybe hadn't seen that before, how they would react to that. So I sat Quaylen down and we watched a couple of different segments from TNT, and I don't know, I guess, how would you describe it for somebody who doesn't know what TNT is? What would you say to them?
TNT, Tuesday Night Titans, was the WWE's version of a late night talk show.
Okay, yes.
I think that's the best way to put it. It's a talk show where they would interview old wrestlers or wrestlers at that time and talk about and go over matches and have little segments, putting them in their own settings so you can see them outside the ring. I guess is the best way to put it. And yeah, just like John said, it was the first time, other than like seeing different clips of things on like different documentaries and stuff. This was my first time ever hearing TNT name. I didn't know if that was the name of the show or the set, seeing everything all at once, and he hit me hard with it, and I had to, and it was good, I guess.
Well, let's give everybody a little context. As you said, it's WWE's version of a late night talk show, and this premiered in the summer of 1984. So this is just after Hulkamania was born. This is just as the Rock and Wrestling connection is getting started. So it's kind of a natural thing. I mean, if you think about it, considering everything that was going on, it was kind of a good idea because you get to see the wrestlers and other elements. It was an extension of just what a wrestling show was at that time. So you get to, interview the wrestlers, and it was just different. You get to know the characters more.
Which I think is actually a good concept to do, because it's just with them wanting to always be sports entertainment, not just wrestling. It's something to do, like reach out and give them another media outlet to get to know the wrestlers and maybe have them catch heat a little bit more, make you feel like more closer with them and things like that, so you are able to follow the storylines at the time better. I think it was something good, and I wouldn't, if they were to revisit that idea, I think it would be something good that they could do now as well.
Well, especially with it being with the network. I mean, this is something that's perfect. Like, the idea is perfect for today because they can have Renee Young host it or somebody like that. But the thing that's extraordinary about this is that this was on Tuesday nights on the USA Network. Now, again, thinking of mine over 30 years ago, television was different. Cable was different. Cable was kind of in its infancy, and it wasn't as established as it was today. But the fact that this was on actual national television, I mean, watching this, the funny thing that strikes me, and you too, is I think that the production value here. What was your opinion of the set and everything else?
I looked at the set, and my first thoughts or reaction was, this is something that I could have made an art class in 5th grade.
Yes, and you would have done a better job.
Yes, like the windows in the buildings look just like something like I would see a scrap a paper scrap and just super glue it onto some cardboard, and hey, that's my building.
Yes.
Like that's what I thought of the set at first, the background of the set.
And they went to like Michael's or the equivalent, whatever would have been. I don't know if Michael's was around back then, but like one of those craft
Right.
stores or whatever, and like with to get the sequin, like the thing where everybody came out of, like the little sequin curtain thing they have. I mean, it's just like, I mean, and again, we're not knocking the production value too much because again, it was 1984, but you've seen stuff from 1984 that looked a lot better than this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, it's like it's almost laughable. I mean, there's some like this would have gotten a terrible grade in our intro, to communication like class that we took, our video one class or whatever, in college. So it's like this would have gotten a terrible grade with those standards. But the other thing that again that's extraordinary about this is the fact that the host is Vince McMahon himself. So you get to see Vince McMahon like thinking that he's Johnny Carson or whatever it is. But the thing that's a little even crazier about this is that the way that Vince talks on here, and again, Vince is the voice of the WWE for over 20 years.
Right.
He did commentary and everything else, and people can say what you want. I thought he was great. I love Vince on commentary.
On commentary, yeah, I like him. The only one I never really liked was Piper, and that's just because he could be over the top sometimes. But
well, hey, that's all right. But what the thing about with Vince here is that in TNT specifically, he seems to have this cadence where he's like trying to like rip off Howard Cosell.
Yeah.
He's like, let's go now to the videotape footage. We have Roddy Piper here. Mr.
Right.
Piper. What would you say is like, the way he's talking is like ripping off Howard Cosell, and I don't know like what the deal with that is.
But then, from what I saw, it only happened sometimes.
And it only happened sometimes, right?
Like, other times he'd be himself, and then he would go into that, and it's just like, Vince, you have you're the voice. You have a voice. Just use your normal voice. You're fine, dude.
We'd also be remiss if we didn't mention, Vince's co-host too, Lord Alfred Hayes.
Oh yeah.
Which forget about everything you've heard. Forget about Seinfeld. Forget about everybody talks about the legendary episode of the puffy shirt. Oh, and how it was so funny, they came up with this thing, and Jerry wore it on the Today Show in the episode, and now that very puffy shirt, that very shirt that he wore is in the Smithsonian, all that stuff. Forget all that. Lord Alfred Hayes on TNT is just rocks the crap out of those puffy shirts. He's wearing these like different like crazy suits, but he always has this puffy shirt going on.
Puffy shirt. I thought that Carlton on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air wore a puffy shirt, but no. Lord Alfred Hayes wore it better than Carlton did.
He wore it better than Carlton, Seinfeld, or any pirate that you've ever seen. Lord Alfred did it first and did it best. So that you have all these different elements, and again, so you have Vince McMahon thinking he's Howard Cosell or whatever it is. Then you have Lord Alfred just Lord Alfred just being whatever, and then when they talk about like the guests and things that they have on, what's amazing to me is that like I guess it took a couple shows, but I don't know when the first show was that they actually had Hulk Hogan on. I mean, Hulk Hogan is, a lot of people regard him as one of the greatest wrestling personalities. Again, you can say what you want about him as a wrestler or whatever, but one of the greatest characters and personalities that there ever was, the most charismatic. Why not start this show off with having Hulk Hogan on as your first guest?
Right.
Why do they have people like Tony? They have people on, and excuse me, I don't mean to sound like, rude or anything by saying this, but like they have a lot of people on who can't really speak great English. Like Salvatore Bellomo doesn't know the difference between the word kitchen and chicken.
Right.
So like they have people on like that, and it's and they have like lesser known wrestlers, and they have Special Delivery Jones bringing out his band, and like they have all this stuff, and like even Roddy Piper on one of the episodes is buried at the last segment.
Yeah.
On the show, and before him they had all these other, random people on that, again, not as much memorable names. To me, these are names that I've grown up with, not necessarily loved and grown up with, but definitely known them all my life. But again, to people like you, Salvatore Bellomo was a new phenomenon.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even know who he was while we were watching the segment.
Right.
I
thought he was a car, somebody like me. Yeah. So let's get to that, because some of the segments here in the very first episode, and I had never really seen the first episode myself until it was on the network here, so I'd never really seen it all the way through. And I'm watching it, and one of the things that struck me again here is they again, in order to, I guess, capitalize on the fact it was a different kind of show, I guess they did every once in a while these like pre-tape segments where they take the wrestlers out of their element and put them in somewhere else. So there's one in particular.
Take them out of their ring and put them in their element.
That's what I meant to say. Exactly. Thank you. Out of the ring in their own element. So the first segment that they decide to do this with is Dr. D. David Schultz. Now, Dr. D. David Schultz is, again, another name that might not be familiar to a lot of wrestling fans, but you know him because you got to work with him and see him at one of the Fan Fest events.
Yes.
And for anybody who, may not know, or anything, younger fans or whatever, Dr. D is famous for slapping John Stossel, the reporter from 2020. And that caused that was a big, thing in the wrestling world and outside of it even. But anyway,
which, let me say, meeting him, when was that, 5 or 6 years ago?
No, it was only like three. Yeah.
He is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Well, when I met him and talked to him, he was
nice.
Such a nice guy. Yeah.
And so, but at the time he was a real dastardly character in 1984, and they were sort of, he was kind of like a badass redneck, but in a different way than Stone Cold.
Yeah.
I guess back at the time.
He was a badass redneck from Tennessee.
Not from Texas. That's the difference, right? So, with all due respect to our friends in Tennessee, I don't think I have any, but
nothing's wrong with Tennessee. Yeah. Go Vols, but yeah.
But we have Vince McMahon that, again, in his Arkansas. Let's go now to some videotape footage of Dr. D. David Schultz at his home. Here's the videotape. And then you go to, and you see the shot of a log cabin.
First, you see a shot of a cow or
over some animal.
A steer or something. And then you hear Vince talking over like, well, that's not where he lives, but this is
right. He corrects himself over top of but then we see his house, and it's like this log cabin thing, and it's Dr. D at home, so he welcomes you in. It's like a really messed up version of Cribs.
Yes.
It's like, so think of WWF Cribs from the early 80s, and he's like, hey, and he's talking to the camera, like,
welcome them in.
Yeah, like, well, what are you doing? You guys are late or whatever, and talking to the camera as if it's like, whatever, and they're there to join him for dinner. So they walk into the house, and he's got these two kids, like boys that are maybe, 8 and 10 years old, something like that. And then his wife, who's clearly not his wife.
She's pretty cute.
She was attractive from back in the day, but she's got this little smirk on her face the whole time. I don't know where they found this woman. Right. I don't know. You can only wonder where she is.
I don't know where they found this house.
They found this house. The house is all, and again, you have to go back and watch this, but the house is all this wood, but it's all this unfinished wood.
Right.
And it looks like Lincoln could have built this or something. It was really weird, which Dr. D goes on to berate his wife for not having dinner ready, so she goes to get dinner ready, and in the meantime, instead of cutting away or to them eating dinner, you just get to sit down with Dr. D and hear him explain how he went in a spaceship or something, and then he built this cabin with his bare hands or whatever.
The one thing that struck me is Dr. D started 7 or 8 different thoughts in this 3 to 4 minute span while he's talking about his log cabin, but never finished anything. He kept getting distracted by either his kids playing with the dogs. That's the thing.
So that's what he would do. That's what he would do throughout this entire thing. Was that he would lose his train of thought, which you could tell like this was all completely off the cuff or whatever. There was nobody scripted this or anything. I would just love to know what the plan was going into this before they shot this, but like he just anytime he loses train of thought, he'd just yell at somebody. He'd yell at his wife or yell at his kids. Woman, what are you doing here, woman? You're so stupid or whatever. Like he would just berate his kids or his wife or the dog or whatever it is every time he'd lose his train of thought.
And then go into a new thought, which had nothing to do with the thought he was or what he was talking about before.
And we get to their dinner, and it's pizza and fried chicken.
Right.
He also hits his head on the lamp of, when he again blames his wife for moving the dinner table, which is why he hit. Okay, so this just gives you an idea, and this goes on for 7 minutes. I timed it, 7 minutes and 20 seconds.
Can I really quick say that anyone who watches this or who have watched this, I want you to notice that the dinner was pizza and chicken, but yet they were eating bread. They did not touch the pizza and chicken at all. All they ate was bread, and then Dr. Tom was even throwing bread. Not Dr. Tom. Sorry, Dr. Tom. If you're listening to this, Dr. D was throwing the bread at his kids and the wife, like, here,
go ahead, eat this.
You want some more bread? Here, eat that. Like, why couldn't he eat the chicken and the pizza? What was wrong with that? And then he tried to eat the chicken and didn't like it. I don't know.
Yeah, so this just gives you an example of the type of thing that they had on TNT. And like I said, it was 7 minutes and 20 seconds of pure torture, really. And this is the first episode. You think they would have done something like working out with Hulk Hogan or like something like that. Anything with Hogan or whatever, just something.
Right.
But then one of the next episode we watched, again, we're just kind of glossing over some of the more memorable things here. But you have to watch these and experience it for yourself. But Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, working out this ragtag group of random people, these random people that are in this gym, and he's helping them work out. And this goes on for almost 10 minutes, this one.
Yes.
Now, I do have to say, you could tell a big difference in I don't know, in my opinion, maybe the promo skills or just off-the-cuff skills of Mr. Wonderful and Dr. D.
Yeah.
Again, I don't mean to I don't want David Schultz to come and kick my ass or anything, but I'm just saying that I think that Paul Orndorff did a much better job of sort of carrying this thing and kind of moving it along.
Yeah. But even still, you watch it and you see that there's no direction from start to finish at all.
Exactly. And it's just completely just random series of events that they just are like, oh, we'll just, and he's berating this woman, and this heavier set woman, and he's saying that she's fat because he's yelling, he's having her do the machine, and it's funny, he's like berating these people and they don't say anything back to him.
Right.
Or anything at all or whatever. And so he's telling her that she's fat because after dinner's over, she stays at the dinner table all night long and it keeps eating.
And doesn't listen to her husband, who's probably telling them to get away from the dinner table.
Right. And so there's stuff like that, or like these guys who are working out in the machine, he makes them get off and he shows them the proper way to do it, which is basically adding more weight and just like actually slamming it harder.
I would say the guys that he was working out were actually pretty cut.
They were in pretty good shape, and he's saying that that they look. It would have been more interesting if there was a bunch of flabby people there, and he was trying. But like some of the people were in pretty good shape, and he was just saying, and he would just keep flexing and saying like this is what a real bicep looks like or whatever, and so that segment went on forever. And again, there's no music or anything else. No. It's just bone dry. Like these segments are just like this is what it is, and there's hardly any like cuts or anything. And again, this is back in 1984, but again, there's a lot of that. I mean, it's a different style and everything. Then you understand that, but it's amazing. Like just again, where the production value, like what it's come to now from that.
I would just like to put out there in the world, if you were a part of any of these segments, please write into us so we can interview you. because that's one thing that we both sat here and asked, like, where did they find these people and where are they now and how do they feel about what they did now? So please, if you were the lady in the pink, or if you were the little kid that kept laughing at the dinner table, please write into us so we can interview you.
Yes, that would be amazing. Just anybody who's a part of any of these segments. And, which brings us to my favorite segment of everything that's on TNT so far. Again, they've only rolled out maybe the first, 10 episodes or so. But is Salvatore Bellomo cooking with Vince McMahon and Lord Alfred Hayes. And Salvatore Bellomo, again, for anybody who isn't aware, was kind of an undercard wrestler, not very memorable, he was kind of just, not a memorable character at all. I don't even know if he was on any pay-per-views or anything like that, but he was an Italian wrestler, who seemed to be very mild-mannered, which, again, maybe this isn't the type of person, that you want. Again, they have segments where they have Roddy Piper, who, Roddy Piper was, in that one segment that we watched, literally had to snort, the longest line of Coke before he went out there. I mean, he was all over the place, and, full Roddy Piper, crazy mode. Full. And then they have, Lou Albano, who's talking about, his medulla and all that sort of stuff and how he made Cyndi Lauper. And it's funny stuff. That's good. And, when they people like him and Pipe, but then it goes to, yes, Mr. McMahon, yeah, I'm from Italy. It's weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this guy, is out there. They get the chef's hat for Lord Alfred and they get a chef's hat for Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And they start cooking. What are they cooking, Quaylen? They're cooking a pizza.
They're cooking a pizza, and I don't know why Vince was so obsessed.
He was really obsessed with this.
With the cacciatore chicken.
Yeah, the chicken cacciatore. Yeah,
or chicken or kitchen cacciatore or whatever he kept saying. Yes. He kept saying it wrong, but yeah, chicken cacciatore. But yeah.
And then a diet salad, exactly. So, so they're making this, and all of a sudden, well, first of all, when they start making the pizza or whatever, Salvatore's got the dough and everything else.
Yeah.
This is Mama Bellomo's recipe, right?
Yes.
So he's kneading the dough and he's doing this whole thing there, and then he says, "You don't need a pin."
Vince asked, "Where's your rolling pin?" And he said, "Real men don't use pins, rolling pins."
Yes. So, yeah. So all of a sudden, this music starts, and it's this Italian little. What is that even called? It's a mariachi band. If it's
a quartet,
Italian quartet. But they have the little guitar and the the accordion and all that, and they're just cutting away to these random shots of these guys singing or whatever, and then they cut back to Salvatore, and he's got a rolling pin.
He's using a rolling pin.
And Vince is losing his shit. Vince is losing it.
And you even hear him say, "Oh, I think they saw us."
Yeah, they caught us. Yeah, he even says that, exactly. So that's, so that goes on. This goes on forever, by the way. This is these are not quick. You have to have a lot of patience to sort of get through this. But eventually they get through it, making the salad, which they asked how long it would take the pizza to cook, and he said 30 minutes, and I don't know. I guess as you said, because I scratched my because I just cooked the pizza the other day, and it was 10 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you said the ovens must not have been.
It's 90 or it's 84. They didn't have high power ovens back then.
Yeah, or at least in Italy, maybe it's wood fired or something. I don't know what they got going on, but anyway, they come back. They go to commercial break, and now they're sitting. This is Billy Joel scenes from an Italian restaurant. They got, they got a whole thing. They got they got a nice little table set up, a candle. They got the Chianti there, which Vince is again obsessed with, and he wants to really get to. But then they have standing there as the quartet, and they're singing and they're doing a nice little Italian thing. Think of Lady and the Tramp, but instead of the two dogs, put Lord Alfred and Vince McMahon there.
Yes.
Okay. So you got that, and then again, Vince is "Where's the chicken cacciatore?"
Yes.
Salvatore brings it out. he starts serving them. But what do you notice when he starts serving this stuff?
Well, what part? You mean like his back is turned to the
He's
camera?
covering, he's covering the shot.
Everything.
Yes. Yeah, that's the first thing. But when you actually see him put the food or start giving them the food.
Oh, of course. It's on paper plates.
It's on paper
Using
plates.
paper plates.
Yes, that are like crumbling under the weight of the food.
Of the food, yes.
Yeah.
It's like paper plates that you would use at like a 4-year-old's birthday party.
Not even, you do something even better.
That when like you put the piece of cake on there, like it can't even hold the cake, you know?
Yeah. And they're putting this big piece of like chicken breast or whatever on this thing, and it's like it's so great. And then they do a little toast or whatever, and then they start eating, and then all of a sudden, like, holy shit, the show's got to wrap up. And then Vince McMahon, like, they forget what's going on, so Vince has to whisper over, and this is all visible on the show, whisper over to Lord Alfred, who's clearly looking down at his
eating.
And he's eating, and he's looking down where he's got the script of like talking about Levi's or their sponsor or whatever it is, and this is all visible. Like, I do our stuff from our sponsor, and whatever.
Right.
We're on a podcast, you can't see me, you don't know what's going on here,
right?
But they're visible on there, so it's really that's my all-time favorite thing so far.
I will say that was the first segment out of watching everything, and just like I said, I haven't watched everything yet, but that was the first one that looked like Vince was actually having fun.
Yes,
the whole entire time, like smiling and laughing, and of course it's because they're getting caught messing around and stuff, but it looked like he actually enjoyed.
Well, it is the whole thing is like Vince just messing around, and again, like the context of him being the owner of the company and all this stuff, it's a much different context watching this now than it would have been in '84, not knowing that. And there's other stuff on there, like Greg Valentine getting a massage from his wife, who's like wearing next to nothing. And then Greg Valentine's on this, like, laying on this table and getting this, like, massage from her. And then, they're making all these different, like, puns about him being a 60-minute man and all this stuff. And, like, what's interesting, too, is that when you look at the thing, it's PG rated, but it says for suggestive dialogue. It says that for these TNT episodes.
Yes.
So you have to watch out. Any kids out there, make sure you have some parental guidance when you're watching TNT, or you might, there's even jokes about Lord Alfred. He gets some of the powder or the flour on his nose, and then Vince makes a comment. It's not the first time I've seen you
powder on his nose.
Yeah. So like, there's all that, or Alfred hitting the sauce when Salvatore's putting the sauce on. So there's just so many crazy and like insane antics that are happening on TNT that definitely put whatever you're watching. You're trying to get through the Monday Night War series. You're trying to get through maybe the Clash of Champions or whatever. To stop that and start watching TNT because it's really great, and you're gonna have a lot of stuff. And it's hard. You have to have a lot of patience, but if you stick through it, you're gonna come out the other end a different person. I promise you.
You'll thank us or hate us afterwards.
Yeah. So I guess that pretty much wraps up the show. Kind of what we want to talk about today. This coming Tuesday is going to be part 2 of my interview with Vince Russo. And after that, next week, we'll be back with another show. We're going to be talking about everybody's favorite event, as we mentioned earlier.
Yes, the Royal Rumble.
The Royal Rumble, which is coming up. We're going to talk about the Rumble goodness.
Can I come back to talk about the Royal Rumble?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll have you back for that, because you have to. So everybody, thanks so much for checking the show out. And again, we'll see you on Tuesday. We'll see you for our next show with Vince Russo.
Thank you for listening. For more, visit the Network Nation at 999nation.com.